Well, thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you for turning on your cameras. I love talking to people. I love talking to people in real life. But anyway, this is what we have now. And I love interaction too. So if you have any questions, please, if it's about something that I'm saying, just open your mic if that's okay, Maria. I don't know. And ask your questions, okay? Otherwise, you can leave your questions in the chat and then we'll have question and answer session at the end. My topic, as Maria said, is the power of reflection, going beyond immediacy. I don't know you at all, which could be good or bad, I don't know. So I don't know your areas of studies. I'm assuming none of you is a philosopher. Is someone a philosopher? Okay, I know some people know philosophy. Okay, no. Okay, if I say things that, or I use concepts or terms that you don't know what they mean and I'm not explicit enough about them, just feel free to say stop and tell us what, like explain it, please. And then I'm gonna share screen. It's gonna facilitate the presentation. Okay, so here we are. The power of reflection going beyond immediacy. I feel I was telling this to Maria when she invited me to talk about this, that this is a topic that all of you could talk about because you are studying, and to study you have to reflect. And you are studying not for something that you are gonna do tomorrow morning, I mean literally February 15th, but for January 15th, but for something that is gonna happen in a few years. So I'm sure all of you could share most of the ideas that we're gonna speak here about. So I wanted to focus on answering two questions. The first one is, where are we going? The second one looked like the same. It is not the same. The second one is, now, where are we going? So the point is that each one of these questions is asked in a different context with a different tone. So for the first one, place yourself in a car that is going 200 kilometers per hour in a highway, and the driver is just speeding and speeding every time more, and it's not following any sign. So the way in which you would ask this question is, where are you going? Like, it's almost anxiety what is getting into you, like, where are we heading towards? Like, I don't understand why we're speeding so much. So this is the context of the first question. The context of the second question is when someone prepare a surprise for you and leave you a note and said, be ready at 3, I'll pick you up. And you know that it's a person that loves you, so it's a nice plan. So you get into the car, you sit down, and you say, now, where are we going? So you want to know where you're going, but the circumstances are very different. The circumstances are peaceful, and you're looking forward to what is going on, what is going to happen. So with this in mind, I'm going to try to answer these two questions. The first one, well, both of them, sharing in each one of them a study and a philosophical concept or idea. That's all we're going to do tonight. I hope it's going to be helpful in some way. It was already helpful for me to prepare it, so it fulfilled its purpose. So we're going to go to the first question. Where are we going? But this is the anxiety, where are we going? This is the one that we're speeding up and we don't know where we are heading towards. And it could be shown in this picture. We are racing against time. We want to get to many things. We want to not just to get to everything we have to do, but we want to do more things than the one we can. And we feel like everything is going too fast. And there are many ways of talking about this. I want to share with you one study about one of the topics that probably you have heard the most lately, especially with the circumstances we are in, that is social media, but specifically texting, and specifically texting for statistics for people that are, I guess, your ages, between 14 and 24 years old. as I say, there are many ways of speaking about this. My purpose is not to focus on social media or texting. My purpose here is to show how fast things are going and are going to keep going, because this is not called to stop. So for people, adults in this age, 18 to 24 years old, the average, also the statistics in this area changed a lot. I just choose one study that was more or less comprehensive, but you may find different numbers. More or less for the purpose of this presentation is the same. This is just to have an idea. So more or less the average texts that a person between 18 and 24 years old receive or send are 128 every day. That means 3,853 texts a month. And these numbers, you may say, yeah, more or less I relate to it. But what I'm interested in by sharing this information is how this is going to affect our capacity to reflect, because we're speaking about reflection. So keeping in mind that 95% of texts are read within 3 minutes of being sent. That means that if we take the number of texts that we receive or send every day, and we know that we answer these texts within 3 minutes of being sent, let's say that we receive them equally spaced for the purpose of this information. That is not the case, because we receive some people send like 5 texts and it's really 1 word in each. So that would count as 1 text, and it really wouldn't take more time to read than 1 text with all these words together. But more or less, that would mean that we receive a text every 7.5 minutes. So if we read every text within 3 minutes of being sent, that means that every 7 minutes, or let's say every 10 minutes, we are focused, like defocused from what we are doing and focusing on answering a text or reading a text. The average response time for a text is 90 seconds. This, you could think, oh, well, that's not bad, 90 seconds. We can get unfocused for 90 seconds, is fine. Yeah, but getting unfocused for 90 seconds every 10 minutes means that our power of concentration diminishes immensely, because we're defocusing, focusing on something else. Not all the texts are about the same topic. So different topics, different inputs every 10 minutes, let's say, and every 90 seconds, or we spend 90 seconds answering this text. What I want to show here is something that I would like you to keep in mind for the next slide. That is this graphic, is that the dynamics of texts that is present in many forms of social media, but texting is very graphic for this concept because are immediate, are very fast, is that this responds to the dynamics of stimulus response all the time. So I receive a text, I read it within 3 minutes, I answer in 90 seconds, and this repeats several times a day. So this means that what I'm doing is I receive an input, I give an answer, and then I keep going. I receive an input, I give my answer, and then I keep going. So there is not much time of reflection. Well, I don't know if you do, but most people receive a text, read the text, and answer. They don't receive the text and say, let me reflect on it. We reflect for a while, and then we say, oh yeah, I know what I want to answer. Like, it's very immediate. That's the reason why people send texts. If they want someone to reflect on it, they would send an email. And if someone sends you a text and you haven't read it in an hour, most likely you're going to receive another text saying, did you read it? Why? Because texts are expected to be seen quickly. They are a quick form of communication. And that's good for when we need a quick message. But again, I don't know how many of the messages that we receive by text are really urgent messages or messages that need to be answered within 3 minutes. All to say that within this dynamic of stimuli response, we're missing something important about our capacity to reflect that we're going to use later. Just keep in mind right now, these dynamics of stimuli response that is present in many social media. And this is one of the reasons why we could ask today, where are we going with anxiety? because we can pass, and I guess you have experienced this, in a day in which you have had many inputs from the outside, not only text, but texts, phone calls, emails. You go to bed and your head is like busy. It's like, I need to wind down, like I need silence. Well, I don't know if you need silence, but your brain does need it. And your brain says, I cannot receive any more inputs. Why is that? Because we are not made for an stimuli response dynamics all the time. Part of our beings, and we're going to see that, needs this dynamic, and they are created for something. But in general, this cannot be the routine every day. Okay, this is the study. Now we're going to go to a more philosophical explanation of a philosophical trend that was started by this man here. Oh, I'm dying to ask you if you know who he is, but I won't do it yet. And this is his friend. They are two people from the States whose names were Charles Peirce and William James. So these two friends, you see that they are almost the same age. These two friends developed a philosophy that is very present in North American philosophy and in North American life in general. There is pragmatism. So as none of you have studied philosophy, I'm assuming you have heard about it, because I think one of your presentations mentioned something about pragmatism at some point. So I'm going to do a quick review of what pragmatism is, because that may explain why we are going so fast today. Remember that if you have any questions, please write them in the chat or open your mic. So there is one of the Harvard lectures in 1903, Immanent, was by Peirce, one of the founders of pragmatism, and the title of the presentation was Pragmatism as a Principle and Method of Right Thinking. So for them, pragmatism was the right way of thinking. And I think they were right for many things. But I cannot say that this is a method that can be universally applied to everything. And I think it's in there where we are having trouble today. This topic is very broad. We can speak about it in several ways. We're going to refer it right now only to thinking, reflecting, because it's the topic. So this is an approach that assesses the truth of theories in terms of the success of their practical application. Already here you can relate to it, because many times when we're studying something, we'd ask the professor, what is this useful for? When you ask that question, you are simply putting into practice this principle from the pragmatic theory, that it is a truth is important in the measure in which this truth can be applied, can have a practical application. That's why I said that this is very helpful for many sciences. It's very helpful for many types of knowledge, but not for every knowledge that exists. So we've said the focus is the practical application of truth. And that means that every truth is a rule for action. And maybe you relate to it and you say, but that's very good. That's nice. That every time that means coherence, that every time that you know something about something, you put it into practice. And this is what life coaching is about. They tell you something, a truth about yourself, about your circumstances, about your projection in the future, and you put it into practice. Yes, the problem is that not every truth is a rule for action. Let's think about something as simple as a sunset. You are watching a sunset, contemplating a sunset. You can say the sunset is beautiful, but there is nothing to do about it. It's true, the sunset is beautiful, but this truth is not a rule for action. You're just contemplating how beautiful the sunset is. A very pragmatic person would say, and Like, okay, the sunset is beautiful, and you just said it's just beautiful. I just wanted to say that it is beautiful. And he would ask, what is this useful for? And there is not a practical application of that truth. And the same thing happened with people. You can say the person is very good, and the person that follows pragmatism would ask, and like, do you want to use her for something? Do you want to use her goodness for some practical outcome? But no, you're just admiring someone. So contemplation, admiration, reflection are many times things that do not have a practical outcome. If we look for the practical application of everything, the idea would be that we are always going to progress. And this is very typical of the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. We thought that by increasing our power to manipulate reality, we were going to be able to progress always and forever. And that increases the speed in which we live, because there's always something else to discover, something else to apply, some new truth that make us do things more efficiently. And this is, as I said before, very good for many areas, but not for everything in human knowledge. So these are the three basic principles of pragmatism. The first one is that experience is the beginning of knowledge. I do agree with this. Experience is the beginning of knowledge for human beings. We start knowing by our senses and our experiences, but not our own experience. But many people experiences are the ones that help us start knowing something. But experience is the beginning of knowledge. We don't start knowledge by, I had a dream yesterday, and then develop a theory on it. We need experience. Okay, then the scientific method is applied to philosophical issues. Here is when I start having a little bit of trouble with this philosophical thought, because the scientific method can be applied to several philosophical issues, but not to all of them. To give you one small example, I did my thesis on the final cause. There are some manifestations of the final cause that can be found in reality, that can be measured, to which the scientific method can be applied. But there are others that come out only from reflection, from thinking, from putting together causes. And there you get to the last cause of reality. That is the object that is proper to philosophy. So the scientific method, the experimental method, helps to get to some areas of philosophy, but not to everything in philosophy. At the end, you're always going to need reflection. Reflection not only in the sense, because for the scientific method, you need to reflect, you need to think, but reflection not only in terms of applying something, a truth to something practical, but reflection also in terms of contemplation, or in terms, as we were saying before, in terms of admiration, or in terms of getting to the last causes of reality, that are things that are manifested. You can count them, you can like measure them partially, not totally. And the last principle for pragmatism is that all knowledge is inferential. There is not intuitive knowledge. And again, this is true, but not for everything. Just think about something so simple as the knowledge of yourself or the knowledge of other people. If you want to know people only by what can be measured, you will know very little about others and about yourself. Starting by, I wish we were in a classroom so that I can ask you this question and hear your answers. But just keep this phrase in mind. Just the knowledge of yourself. Think of the me thought does not think. That already makes you doubt about applying the scientific method to self-knowledge. Because the me that I'm thinking about, the one that I have here, this is me thinking about myself. So I'm here. This me is not thinking, because it's just an idea of myself. So already what I'm talking about as me is not me. This is what the scientific method gets to. But I need other type of knowledge, that is the connatural knowledge, to get to know myself and to get to know others. This is just one tiny example of things that the pragmatistic method does not get to. Okay, so with this summary, we can finish the explanation of our pragmatism. Truth is the cash value of an idea. This was a very famous phrase by James, one of the founders of pragmatism. And what it means is to know if something is true or not. Just see if this can be translated into a cash value, into something that you can count, that you can measure, that you can benefit from. So again, going back to our sunset, this sunset is beautiful. So I want to test, according to the pragmatistic method, if this is true or not. Truth, so the sunset is beautiful, is the cash value of an idea. Okay, what are the benefits? What are the measurable outcomes of this affirmation? I can set the peace in my soul. So the scientific method comes and said, how do I measure the peace in your soul? There is no measure that I can. This is not an object that can be measured. So this is one of the examples in which the method does not reach the full truth, according to my humble opinion. So keep in mind, truth is the cash value of an idea. This is like a summary of pragmatism. And that helps to understand why we are going fast today. Because the principle behind manipulation of nature, manipulation of reality, and inventions, and keeping like going forward and forward, makes us want to discover more and more and control more and more. I didn't say it explicitly, but by now you would have found out that the psychological idea behind pragmatism is control. If I can measure something, I can control it. But if I cannot measure something, the thing controls me. And we don't like being controlled. But in reality, we don't control everything. We are part of a bigger cosmos. Because we're part of a bigger thing that goes beyond ourselves, we need something that is reflection. We need something that helps us realize that we are part of this bigger cosmos, but that this cosmos does not depend on us, that we're part of it, but we don't control it. With the pragmatic theory, we feel like we are in control of things, and we are in control of some things, but we are not in control of everything. Okay. Criticism of pragmatism comes from Professor Taylor. He is an emeritus professor of McGill University, political science. He says some pragmatism take humanity out of the world because reality is neither dependent nor independent of us in a strict sense, but we are a part of reality. We have to know how to be in reality. I found this very appropriate for our time, and especially this last part. We have to know how to live in reality. I guess if Aristotle comes to visit us and he sees that a university professor is telling us we have to know how to be in reality, he would be shocked. And he would say, where are you then if you are not in reality? Because he was a very realistic person. And his philosophy is very realistic. What Charles Taylor is saying here is that if we get only to what we can measure, we are taking, he calls it humanity. That is that part that we cannot measure, but that is much more important than the one that we can measure. So we are happy because we control, we are happy because we can give an exact account of things as they happen. Yeah, but we are not part of that equation. As I said, the me thought does not think. We're leaving ourselves outside of that equation. The me, the real me, because we're thinking about this me that is here, that became an object as soon as I thought about it. But this is not the real me. The real me is here. And this real me is much more complex than numbers and experiments. So we have to know how to be in reality. And this is what we're going to try to do right now by answering the second question. Now, this question is free from anxiety. We're just sitting down. Our friend is bringing us to a nice place. It's a surprise. We sit down in the car and we say, now, where are we going? What's what the future holds for us? And the study that I want to share with you, we're going to do the same thing as we did before. I'm going to share a study and a philosophical idea. The study comes from Deloitte, the consulting firm. They are constantly doing studies about many things, but among others, they're studying how work is being transformed in the last years and how work is going to be conceived in the future. They did one. This one is from last year. Well, no, yeah, 2 years ago now, 2019. And I found very interesting what they put the focus on. Maybe it's common sense, we would say now, I think, but it's very interesting what they found out with this study. They said with work redefinition, work is becoming no longer simply about task execution. It's about creating new sources of value for customers and the business. Although redesigning jobs and redefining work are both typically integral to long-term strategy, our research shows that too many companies are focused primarily on the former. So with the development of artificial intelligence, we know that there are many jobs that are going to disappear. So what many companies are doing is to redesign their processes. But what Deloitte is finding is that they are focusing too much on this, like making easier processes or making cheaper processes, and they're leaving aside the redefinition of work. So the less familiar but more expansive approach is to redefine what work is all about. And here's what I would like you to focus on. It shifts the primary objective of work from efficiency to broader value creation. So they're telling us efficiency, so looking for practical outcomes in everything was nice, but this can be done by a machine. So this is going to be replaced. So we have to move from efficiency to creation. And this is when the power of reflection gets illuminated in a special way, because it's true that we use reflection to succeed in efficiency, but it's true also that this is not the proper function of reflection. The proper task or the proper act of reflection is to create, is to bring something new, something personal to the world that comes only from you. Because reflection, we are going to see in a second, is one of the most personal activities that you can do, that you can perform in life. So there is a shift, or there will be a shift from efficiency to creation. When work is appropriately redefined, workers focus on identifying and addressing unseen problems and opportunities instead of executing tasks. So here is very explicit the need of reflection. When you are called, imagine that you are hired and your boss said, okay, your job is going to be to identify and address unseen problems and opportunities. You may get nervous. You may see how I'm going to solve problems that I don't see. That's the point. Your boss is telling you, use your brain, like reflect. I want you to bring new value to the company, and a value that only you can give. So we are not talking about executing tasks. We know how to do that. What we don't know how to do, basically, like if we put this radically, what he's saying is, we know how to do tasks, but we don't know how to be yourself, because no one can replace you. So we need you. We need your brain. We need your approach. We need your capacity to reflect and identify and address unseen needs. So it's clear that we are going towards this, but what is not super clear, as the study shows, is that companies are focusing on developing creation instead of efficiency. So it's like if the problem is identified, the mechanisms are being put into place to go, like, to replace executing tasks, but not a lot of effort is being put into changing the focus, shifting from efficiency to creation. This is just a reference if you want to read the full study, because this is much more interesting than what I said. If you just Google redefining work for new value, Deloitte, this is going to come up, February 2019. And one of the, they had 3 conclusions. The first one was we have to learn how to zoom out. That is basically thinking, like to take distance from things so that we can see unforeseen needs. We can see unseen needs. So I really recommend you to read this because it encouraged us for the task that we're going to talk about right now. That is a little bit more difficult than answering texts in 90 seconds. And it's this. Okay, this is Aristotle's theory of action. For him, again, I'm going to explain this like in 5 minutes. It's much more complex than this, but I think what we're going to say is going to be enough for us to understand the tasks that are going to bring new value, that are going to help us create from different, like we're going to be able to differentiate between these tasks and the tasks that are just execution. Okay, for him, there are 2 types of action, the transitive actions and the immanent actions. The transitive actions are like building. The end is reached once the action is finished. So when, like in here in Montreal, we have many buildings that are not, like they started, but I guess for some reason they are taking a break, so they are not finished. So you cannot say this action is finished, like the building is not finished. So you said they are still building. Only when the building is done, you say the action of constructing is finished. So until you have the end product, the action keeps going. And when the end product is reached, the action stops. So you don't keep building when the building is done. And you keep building until the building is done. So this is in 2 words what transitive actions are those who always have as an effect an end product that is different from the subject. Like I'm the builder, but the building is different from myself. Like there is a product that is objective, independent, outside of the subject that is performing that action. And there are immanent actions. Immanent actions are like this one. This is the example he gives for an immanent action, that is to see. And these are actions in which the end is reached when the action is taking place. None of you would say, someone would ask you, what are you doing? And you said, I'm preparing to see. No one says that. Like either you're seeing or you're not seeing. Like this girl is looking at something through the window. So when someone asks her, what are you doing? She's going to say, I'm looking at a bird. I'm looking at a tree. So she's performing the action. And by performing the action, she reaches the end of that action. So in this type of action, the end and the product, the end and the end are always together. They're concomitant. They happen at the same time. As you can imagine, these kind of actions are always successful, always. So if you want to be always successful in life, focus on immanent actions. Because the building, you can start building and do not finish, and then you are going to have an unsuccessful action. You are going to have an action that, philosophically speaking, is frustrated. For immanent actions, there are not chances of frustration. Because if the action takes place, the end, the goal of that action is reached. So this is a positive point for reflection. Okay, so intransitive actions like building, the end exclude the action. So I cannot say the building is done unless I say the action of constructing is done too. In the second case, the immanent actions, immanent, I didn't say it, but immanent comes from Latin, manere, that is stay. So immanente means immanent, means staying inside. So the end inside of the subject. The end is the action. So the end is not an outside product. The end is in myself, it's in the action that I'm performing. So Aristotle said in a very easy way, he says, to see is to have seen. Like as soon as I see, I already have the goal for that action. Why am I spending time explaining this to you that you may say, what are we talking about? Okay, this is important because as you may have already realized, the pragmatic theory understands every action as a transitive action because we're always looking for the practical outcome of things. And reflecting, thinking is an immanent action. And sometimes it's not going to have an outcome outside of myself. Many times it will, because if I'm thinking, let's say I'm in charge of a project and I'm thinking about the plan and I print the plan and the plan is there and I organize the conference, let's say, there is a problem there. But this is part of this thinking process. There are many things about this thinking process that didn't translate in any printed document. So for pragmatism, every action is a transitive action. And reflecting, thinking, is mainly an immanent action. It's an action, you don't say, I don't know, you have another exam and the professor asks you something and you said, wait a second, I'm in the process of thinking. Like you could say it because you're trying to remember things and we're in time and space, but really either you know or you don't know. Like things are not going to come to your mind in any different way, but the way they came in, that was studying. And as you're studying and as you understood, you already reached the end of your action. You don't need an exam for that after their exams. Or not, it's the same. I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if exams are needed or not. I don't know. But the end of the reflection, the end of reflection is already in the act that is performed because the end is the action. Okay, so now that we finished the explanation of the philosophy behind like the explanation of pragmatism, the philosophy behind looking always for a practical outcome, and the theory, Aristotelian theory of action, so the difference between immanent action and transitive actions, we can focus on reflection. So reflection is, as we said, an immanent action. So thinking, when I think about something, I could say, the same as Aristotle said, to see is to have seen. I can say the same thing for thinking. To think is to have thought. Like, there is an end in itself. Sometimes, when we want to start thinking more and reflecting more, you may say, as a friend told me, I have a friend who told me, I'd like to learn how to think more and reflect. So I said, okay, just start. Let's think. So we were quiet like for 3 seconds. And she looked at me and said, I finished thinking. So clearly, she thought that she has to come up with something, a conclusion, an idea. And this is because we're very driven by the pragmatistic philosophy. But there are many other benefits. Like when I say that we don't need to look for a practical outcome for everything, it doesn't mean that reflecting doesn't have any benefits that we can really see and measure in a way. And I'm going to share with you 3 of them. The first one is that you can have personalized answers. When you are afraid of something, let's say you are in your house, you are by yourself, you know that, but you start hearing noises downstairs. What is that happens? There is a reaction that you don't plan, it just happens, and it's that the blood of your body focus on your legs. This is a typical physical reaction for fear. That is when you say the person became white. This is not because the whiteness is going to do something for fleeing, but it's because the body reacts to that fear, to that threat, by sending the blood to the legs so that we can run faster. You know that? So when we say someone became white, the reaction of the body is not to become white, but is to send the blood to the legs so that we can run faster. So by reflecting, you can have a personalized answer to that situation. Instead of you're fleeing and going through the window and going to the neighbors and said, I listened to someone in the kitchen and I'm afraid, you can think and say, okay, what could it be that is downstairs? This doesn't mean not to react to fear, because that's why we have a mechanism. It's a mechanism of survival. So we are not going to do a doctorate thesis every time that we are afraid in order to reflect and see if it's worthwhile fleeing or not. This is not the invitation here. But the invitation is to think a little bit so that you answer, so that you have basically time to answer in a personalized way. So that your answer comes from your whole being, and not only from your immediate reaction, that is usually an affective reaction. Like fear is a feeling. So we don't want to react always to life, because we want to bring something new to life, right? We want to bring something that is personal to life. So a way of doing that is to think and do not act only by stimuli response. Do you remember the first graphic that we put there when talking about texting? The problem with this dynamics, that is good for many things, is good for fleeing. When the lion is in front of you, there is no reflection needed there. It's obvious what is going on, just run. But sometimes we're afraid of things that are not there really. So thinking helps us to personalize our answers. So to answer not in a reactive way, but in a personal way. So deciding for yourself what is that you want to do. So you could say, okay, I could phone 911, I can check downstairs, I can whatever goes with your temperament. But it's an answer that you are going to decide. Maybe in a situation of fear, this is less clear because you don't want to reflect more, you want to act, you want to do something. But in other situations, like I don't feel like doing something, reflecting helps you see what is that you really want. Like let's say there is Wednesday morning, you have to get up and follow courses online, but you are really, really fed up with the courses online. So you said, I really don't want to do this. So your feelings are saying, stay in bed anyway for one day. But then when you reflect about it, and you think about it, and you think, what is that I want, me personally, like some part of me wants to stay in bed, but this is not my whole being. There is another part of me that really wants to learn and really want to go to classes and really want to know what the professor is saying today, because this is going to be important for tomorrow's paper that is due. So this part of me, that usually is the rational part, helps me to have a personalized answer. So an answer in which I am answering with my full person. First benefit of reflecting. Second benefit is new perspectives. As we were saying before about Deloitte's study, they said the shift is from efficiency to creation, or values creation that we're talking about, but we can speak about creation in general, bringing something new. I'm reading right now biography of Abraham Lincoln, and he had just been elected president, and he is calling people to be part of his cabinet. And as you may know, he called to be part of his cabinet to his political enemies. So people who didn't think in the same way as he did, and that ran against him in the Republican races before the elections. So he called these people and people from other parties, and his close friends told him, what are you doing? You're making it much more difficult to run the country. And he said, I need their perspectives. I need that because I have mine, but mine is very limited. I need other people's perspectives. What is showing that? What is showing is he didn't want control. He wanted a broader vision of reality because he knew, because he was a thinker, that reality was much bigger than himself and his own views. And because he himself cannot have every view possible, He surrounded himself with people that think differently so that he can have other eyes and other ways of looking at life. Well, this goes outside of the dynamics of stimuli responses because it goes outside of just reactions. It is a calling to new ways of acting, or what Deloitte was saying, a new capacity to detect unseen needs. And the last one is fulfilled life. We are not only stimuli response beings. When psychologists applied the scientific method to human behavior, their conclusions only get to the attitudes that respond to the stimuli response mechanisms in our lives. But this is not fully ourselves. In that part, we're very similar to animals, for example. They respond to this mechanism of stimuli response. But this is not enough. The two main actions that a human being can perform, that are to think and to love, are not measurable. So unless we reflect, unless we think, we're not going to live a life that is fully human in the strict sense of the word, that is fully using the full human potential. So we can be controlling, we can be measuring, we can be predicting. But if there is something beautiful about human beings, is that they are unpredictable. And we are unpredictable precisely because the two main actions that we can perform cannot be predicted. Loving and thinking are not things that we can predict. We can say, yeah, that person is going to react badly to this other person because she was ungrateful yesterday to her. But that's the thing. We have the power to forgive that person and to react towards her in an unforeseen manner. We can invite her to our birthday party, and people are going to say, what? That does not correspond to the pattern. That's the point. I'm not in the pattern because I am a human being. And this is when the method of philosophies that want to apply the scientific method to every truth fail, because our experience shows that we are not beings that only respond to stimuli response. Okay, and finally, 3 advices in case you want to spend more time of thinking, and so that what my friend experienced doesn't happen to you, so that you want to think and then 3 minutes after you're in silence said, I finished, it's done, I have nothing else to do. So the first advice is what Deloitte advised to the enterprises they were working with, that is to zoom out. We have a capacity that is very special to go out of this world whenever we want. Like right now, we can go with our brains, with our reason, with our reasons, not with our brains, with our reason, we can go out of Earth. Because right now I can see Earth. Like if I think about it, I can think of how Earth is from the outside. And I can do that because I have that capacity that is not limited by time and space, and that allows me to go beyond immediacy, to go beyond what I see, what I experience, what is in front of my eyes, what I can hear. And this is the capacity to think. So zoom out. This can be done in many ways. One way is journaling, because it's a way of taking perspective to your life. You live many things in life, but then you sit down and you write what happened that day or that week, whenever you do it. And this is a way of zooming out and looking at your life from afar. It's still you looking at your life, but you're looking at it from afar. And how many times when we read our journals from 3 years ago, we say, wow, this thing that seems so important to me then, it wasn't a big deal. Well, why that happens? Because we have this capacity to zoom out and to see with perspective. And this is possible because of our capacity to reflect. Second advice, seek silence. Not only enjoy silence when it comes, seek silence. We need moments of silence. Every day or every week or every month, an evening of reflection, of silence, of being quiet, of no music, of contemplating the sunset, of looking at some art, like doing something that goes out of the dynamics of stimuli response. A dynamic that makes us precisely what it does is to place us in a disposition to discover unseen needs. That many times it's going to be ourselves. Many times it's going to be getting to know ourselves. But other times it's going to be a new perspective on things. Like I'm sure when Lincoln decided to invite his political enemies to his cabinet, he thought about it before in a moment of silence. And it says in the biography many times how he needed to go for walks just to think. And this is true that it goes sometimes with temperaments. Some temperaments need to think more than others. They are less prompted to action than others, but every human being needs to think. So these moments of silence can be moments of going for a walk in the evening or in the morning or in the afternoon, whenever you want to go for a walk, or of reflecting, like doing meditation, praying, doing, depending on your beliefs, but having a moment in which basically there are not inputs all the time, so that we can get out of these dynamics of stimuli response. And the last advice is foster good conversations, because this is a very nice way to learn how other people think and to convey your own thoughts. So nothing like sharing thoughts to know if we really think what we say we think. Is the typical thing that a professor says when he asks, could you explain this? And the student said, I know it, but I don't know how to say it. Well, this is a sign that we may not know him very well, because only when we speak about something in a way that other people can understand, probably we have understood it. So fostering good conversations, that can be done so many times at lunch with our friends, in discussions in the classroom, in the weekends, skating, doing whatever we do, fostering good conversations. That means getting off our phones for some time, maybe say to our friends, hey, we're gonna have like 1 hour phones off conversation, like just let's talk about life. And my experience doing that has been 100% positive. Some people have even told me, I haven't had a conversation in many months. So I was like, what do you do at home? And she said, we just share facts. Like, how was your day? Fine. How did you do? I don't know, what is that we're going to do tomorrow? Let's plan for the weekend. But it's always something very practical. It's not about ideas. So we are all craving for that, sometimes without realizing it. And I think that's all I have to share today. Do you have any questions? I'll be happy to answer them if I know.
Okay, before we get into questions, so it's almost time. So if people need to leave, feel free. But then we can take like 15 minutes of question and answers.
Sure.
Do you want to stop sharing your screen, Susana, so people can see your face?
Yeah, I love that. Are there any questions? Eva has a question. Queenie has a question. Oh,